Hey everyone, it's Matt here again, and I've posted a couple videos detailing my first couple matches in the Wooper Club League Draft League, Season 4, and I wanted to take this time to give a little more detail about uh, like just my team in general and my thought process in drafting it and how I think it goes really well together. To just give a little bit more of an in-depth look into the Pokemon that I'm using and the thought process that goes into team building as I approach each match. First, I wanted to give a little bit of background about the league itself. So the Wooper Club League is originally started to keep basically my group of friends from high school in communication with each other, and we started with 2 seasons of monotype, which was interesting. The first season was horribly broken because you were bound to one type for the entire season, and certain types in a head-to-head are going to have advantages over other types, and so it was pretty unbalanced. But then we did monotype again for the second season for some reason, and that was actually a little more balanced. We made it so that the types rotated throughout the season and that you had 3 types at a time. So you would bring 3 teams to a dedicated match, and it was still kind of like a rock, paper, scissors within each best 2 of 3 set, but at least it was more balanced. You knew what types you were going to be up against within the given week, and then there was a little bit of randomness to it. And I think considering how lopsided a format like monotype is inherently going to be, I think we balanced it really well. But the amount of work that went into balancing it week to week was kind of a lot, so we were looking to move to a different format. So season 3, we did VGC 2019 Ultra Series, which was totally different, but something that a number of us were looking to get into because we attended, many of us, the Pokemon North American International Championships in Columbus, Ohio last year, and some of us, were kind of excited by that. We got to see Wolf Glick win his international title there, and so a lot of us were feeling really pumped about the format, wanted to get to know it a little better, and maybe actually play at some VGC events. And so we made the VGC 2019 format the format for season 3 of the Wooper Club League, and I think that went pretty well. And after the release of Sword and Shield, we decided to look at something called Draft League. And Draft League is inherently a format where there's a draft order, which is determined either randomly or, in our case, we did it based on the results of the last season, even though the formats are completely different. And the order goes in a snake order, at least that's how we did it. And so, for example, the first person picks first in the first round, and then they pick last in the second round. And so the person who picks last in the first round then has 2 consecutive picks, comes back to the first person, they have 2 consecutive picks, and then it goes back and forth like that. So that's how we did it. And first we had to get all the Pokemon in tiers. We decided to restrict the format to being Pokemon that are either in the Galar Pokedex or able to be brought into Sword and Shield through Pokemon Home. And we also decided to prevent the use of hidden abilities that are not yet released. So, for example, you can see here on my screen, Cinderace has Libero as its hidden ability. However, since that is not yet released, it is not able to be used. And so I can only bring Blaze, and admittedly that's probably the only reason that Cinderace is even allowed to be picked and not banned outright entirely. So we have 5 tiers. 6 of the picks that you make have to be from certain tiers. So for example, I think you have to pick 1 tier 1, 1 tier 2, 2 tier 3, 1 tier 4, and 1 tier 5 Pokemon for your team, and then you have 4 extra picks that you have 400 points for, and each tier is given a point assignment. So you can draft those 4 free picks from whatever tier you want, as long as their points end up totaling 400 points or less. So I don't know all the point values off the top of my head, but Tier 1, for example, is 180 points. So, if you draft a second Pokemon out of Tier 1, then you're already taking a big hit to your remaining points, since you're going to have to draft primarily from low tiers from there. And then Tier 5 Pokemon, I believe, are just 40 points. And one thing that we did to shake up our format from a lot of other draft leagues is that we decided to allow any Pokemon that are in Tier 5 in our draft to be able to Dynamax in battle. We didn't want to ban Dynamax outright, since it is kind of a fun mechanic, but we didn't want to allow any Pokemon to Dynamax because in singles, especially a 6-on-6, it is has the potential to be very unbalanced and can totally just turn the tide of battle, even if your opponent has been playing completely smart and optimally the whole time. So we decided to allow it, but only for Pokemon that were considered to be in general underperforming. And so any Pokemon that you see listed with Tier 5 next to them in this little breakdown here are able to Dynamax during battle. And if they have a Gigantamax variant, then they can do that as well. So that being said, that is the background and the format that we are playing in. There are 8 players. Every coach was asked to make a team logo if they wanted one, at the very least a team name. So I am the Cincinnati Incineroar. I based this logo here off the University of Cincinnati's Bearcats logo, and it's supposed to be Incineroar's paw. I think it's kind of cool. It also looks vaguely like the outline of the shape of Ohio, although that wasn't the primary intention here. And yeah, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the breakdown. First thing I'll go into is the order that I drafted the Pokemon, to kind of give a little bit of insight into my thought process as I was approaching this process. So my first pick overall was Dragapult. It's extremely fast, has just great stats all around, and I believe right now is the all-site kill leader on Draft League NL, which, by the way, draft-league.nl is the website that we use to organize and run our draft league. So if you're interested in running one yourself, then you are welcome to check that out. And you can also go to the main page and look at all the leagues that are listed on there. And so, if you wanted to keep up with our league, then you can go to the main page, find the WCL, and click on that, and you can view all the teams, all the coaches, and the results of every match and everything like that. It's very cool how public facing it is, and there's some information to get in contact with us on there as well. So anyway, to come back to my draft, Dragapult was first. An incredible Pokemon. I had the second overall pick in the draft, was second in the draft order for each round. That was going in the regular order of the snake order. And so the first overall pick was Dracovish, and by the Blessed Walreins. And yeah, I wanted Dragapult because it's just an incredibly versatile Pokemon. Its speed is amazing, and that's so important in Draft League because when you're planning for a match, you can see everyone else's, you can see the speed of every single Pokemon on the opponent's team, and it's highly possible that Dragapult is going to outspeed every single Pokemon that my opponent has week to week. I think the only Pokemon that was drafted at all that's faster than it is Zeraora, and it's only 1 point of speed faster, so it's right there, very close. And speed is definitely something you want to consider when planning a team for a given weekly matchup. So yeah, very happy with that overall first pick. Second overall pick, so this was when the order came back to me, where I picked second to last in the second round. I went for Charizard. Charizard we had in Tier 5, which, as I mentioned, is allowed to Dynamax, and since Charizard has a Gigantamax form, it is able to do that as well. And honestly, I'm gonna come right out and say it, and I think that everyone else in the league is kind of acknowledging it at this point. I mean, obviously our system isn't perfect for Dynamaxing and everything, but at the very least, I can guarantee you that Charizard does not deserve to be in a tier where it is allowed to Dynamax and Gigantamax, because it is just so good. If by itself it deserves to be in tier 5, then we need to change it so that there's like a tier 5 Dynamax and then tier 5 not Dynamax, and maybe make the Dynamax part cost a little more or something like that, because, you know, this was a super cheap pick. Like, anything from tier 5 is a super cheap pick, and the fact that it can Dynamax as well kind of like cancels out the point of having them be cheaper for being weaker, you know? So anyway, I think this was a total steal. The fact that it went this long, even though it was a tier 5, I mean, it's just an absolutely amazing Pokemon, and it's been incredible in my first couple matches. I mean, if you haven't seen my week 1 video, you can go ahead and watch that, but, you know, it was pretty much the MVP of that, and then, you know, managed to take a KO or two in my week 2 battle as well. So yeah, just absolutely incredible. Its Gigantamax move is amazing, but even if I want to run it in regular Dynamax to set up the Sun for myself with the normal fire type max move instead of Gmax Wildfire, then I can do that as well. And so I have like a lot of flexible options there, because Solar Power, of course, boosts Charizard's special attack by 50% in the Sun, and that's not counting, you know, the 50% boost to fire type moves already from the Sun. So a 2.25 times boost to my special fire moves in the Sun is kind of ridiculous and just absolutely amazing. And plus it gets, you know, Stab Max Airstream, which boosts its speed as well. So definitely an incredible pick that I'm very lucky to have, and, you know, expect to see that very often. And my next pick, which, coming back the other way in the snake order, was very close to my second pick, was Lapras. This Pokemon I got, it was also in tier 5, and so therefore also able to Dynamax and Gigantamax. Its Gmax move, Gmax Resonance, is really good. It makes ice type moves instead of setting Hail. It sets up Aurora Veil automatically, which is, for those of you who don't know, both screens, Reflect and Light Screen. So I'm taking 50% damage from all moves just by using one move for 5 to 8 turns, depending if I have the Light Clay or not to extend the duration of it. And so it's totally a good pick. I think it was another steal. However, because of just how good Charizard is, I don't know how often I'm going to end up bringing it, because you can only Dynamax once per match. And if, you know, I'm using Lapras just to set up some extra defenses, it might not be worth doing that over just like the pure sweeping potential of Charizard, but it depends on like the week-to-week matchup. And plus Lapras, you know, for being in tier 5, I think it's a solid defensive Pokemon anyway, even if I don't intend to Dynamax it in a given match. And the cool thing too is, like, you know, depending on the flow of battle, if I bring both, then I can decide, like, in the moment which one of them that I want to Dynamax, which is kind of cool. And another reason that I might not want to even bring Charizard to the match, I'll get to later. So yeah, let me just scroll down here so you can see the whole team. Alright, cool. So yeah, Lapras, great Pokemon, I think. Totally a steal for tier 5, especially, I mean, its Gigantamax form is just like icing on the cake there, honestly. So my 4th overall pick, this was after another while because it had to go to the end of the draft order and come back to me, was Morotom. This is Pokemon, it's great. I wanted a grass type, and this is a really good one because it has pivot potential. It's decently fast. I can run a Scarf set. It's a great, you know, general utility Pokemon. I can Defog, I can Will-O-Wisp, Volt Switch, Pain Split. You know, it's got all kinds of potential. Plus, like, Leaf Storm, you know, is incredibly powerful as well. So very versatile. I mostly got it as a pivot, and, you know, to kind of form the part of the backbone of the defensive core which I had already formed the rest of, because the fire, water, grass core is very common for teams, especially in draft league. It's something that a lot of teams want to have as kind of a staple as they're drafting. Definitely not like necessary, but something that I wanted to have. And since I already had Charizard and Lapras, figured I would round it out with my next pick. And I think in the draft we had like 4 Rotom forms go in like 5 picks, or it might be like 3 and 4 or something like that. I don't remember specifically what was drafted when, but yeah, it was like, okay, this round everyone's getting a Rotom form. So yeah, I was definitely glad I got that when I did, because everyone else was certainly thinking about it. Yeah, so pick number 5 was Slurpuff. Slurpuff is a great Pokemon in my opinion. I think it's properly tiered in tier 3, because it's not like outstanding outright, but it's definitely, I think, better than tier 4. It's like maybe tier 4 worthy, but I think that it's certainly good enough to be in tier 3, so I think we put that in the right place. This Pokemon it's interesting because like you don't expect it to be like great, which is one thing I like about Draft League, but it has like so many options on its own that it can pull off, namely being the ability to run an Unburden Belly Drum like sweep set. So you can use Belly Drum, which totally maxes out your attack stat, cuts your HP by half, which will then allow you to consume a citrus berry if you're holding one. And Unburden, once you lose your item by consuming the citrus berry, then doubles your speed. And it already has a very respectable base 72 speed anyway, which, not great on its own, again, so it requires a little bit of setup. But, once you double that, I mean, you're faster than Dragapult. So it's, yeah, really good for that as well. But it also has, like, Cleric potential as well, which I'll get into in a little bit. And, yeah, so very cool. I think a slept-on sweeper for sure. Oh, and another primary reason that I got it. For some reason, this thing gets sticky web. I don't want to, like, think about it, but, like, why? But, I'm not going to complain. It is very cool, I think. Sticky web is, in my opinion, one of the better hazards, because, especially in Draft League, because, like I mentioned, speed is so important, and if you know that, like, your opponent has a Pokemon that is going to, like, outspeed your entire team, for example, and you don't want to, like, run a scarf on the thing that you need to take it down, then you can use positioning to your advantage and run sticky web. However, a lot of coaches, I think, in our league are starting to realize that hazards are a really big deal in the Draft League format, and like everyone knows exactly what hazards you can bring and how much removal you have, and so heavy duty boots are starting to be a lot more common, at least in the matches I've had so far. So expect Slurpuff to try and slow some opponents down. I mean, you can't bring heavy duty boots on everything. I mean, you can, but then you're missing out on other items. So it definitely puts some pressure on, and if that doesn't work, then hey, go ahead and belly drum sweep. Yeah, so that brings me to my 6th overall pick. So this is then coming back in the order. So towards the end of the 6th round, I got Bronzong. This one was like kind of a mispick. I don't think I really got sniped on anything in the whole draft, and so that's not like what I mean here. But I like was looking at tier 5, and I decided I wanted Togedemaru, because that's another like really solid Pokemon. It can be defensive, it can like be an attacker, and plus it can Dynamax. And so, I mean, Steel is one of the best like max move types because it boosts your defense stat. And so I was really into that, but then like I forgot what it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't remember what my Pokemon was that I wanted to get. And so I was looking at the tiers, and I knew it was a Steel type, and I saw Bronzong, and I'm like, oh yeah, it has to be Bronzong, and so I drafted it. And then I like saw Togedemaru later, and I remembered, and I was like, oh my gosh, like how did I not realize that? But that would have been my 3rd tier 5 Pokemon and 3rd Dynamax able user, so I was definitely like already okay in that department. So yeah, Bronzong, I mean, it's great. also. I've been happy with it so far. Great defensive Pokemon. It has great defensive typing, and good, defensive stats. It also has the ability to set up hazards, and I think removal, we'll see that at the bottom here, once I'm done breaking this down. I think it belongs pretty solidly in Tier 3. Yeah, and, it can do all sorts of things, like set different weather, all that, which I tried to take advantage of in my Week 2 match with Sunny Day for Charizard, and, might try that a little more. Although I'm kind of amplifying the fire weakness when I do that. So, I just got to be careful about when I do that. Although it does get heat proof, so you never know. Might bring that sometime. So, yeah, pick number 7 then, Reuniclus. Since I did pick Bronzong, I was kind of thinking, like, hey, I have a couple slow Pokemon, like, I need a Tier 2, and by this point, like, mostly everyone else had picked a Tier 2, because they were kind of going down the list. They were like, okay, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, whatever, whereas I went from Tier 1 straight to Tier 5, and then started working up, like, to Tier 3. Yeah, I think 3 consecutive Tier 3 picks in a row then. And so I still didn't have a Tier 2, and so everyone else had kind of picked one by then, and there wasn't a lot left that I was really interested in, but I was like, hey, since I have, like, the potential for Trick Room in Bronzong already, I know it's doubling up on a Psychic type, but why not get Reuniclus? Like, it's one of my favorite Pokemon just in general, like, in terms of design, and it's been fun using it. I'm bummed that I can't Dynamax it with it being all the way up in Tier 2. However, I think it has the potential to be really fun, especially if I'm playing someone who has, like, a faster team in general, then I can kind of flip around, maybe get some sweeps up there. So I think it has a lot of potential. I haven't explored that yet. I haven't brought it to a match after the first 2 weeks, but I think it has the potential to pull some interesting stuff off, so look out for that. Number 8 is Delibird. I was really surprised, and we'll see in more depth in a little bit, like, the hazard potential that this thing has. Like, it's like rapid spin and, like, all kinds of different hazards, and I was just like, why does this have all this? So, like, I got it for that because I wanted some more removal other than just Rotom, but also I was thinking, since it can Dynamax and it gets Hustle, like, Hustle boosts your attack stat by 50%, but lowers your accuracy by 20%, so you're gonna miss some of the time. However, when you're Dynamax, you can't miss, so it's basically just like a free attack boost. So that's kind of what I was thinking about cashing in on. It's like, I actually have been playing in a VGC in VGC 2020, and I got top 4 at an MSS, which, for a beginner I think is, like, pretty solid. And I brought Durant on that team, and, like, that was its whole gimmick. It has Hustle with Dynamaxes, and it can one-shot, like, all kinds of stuff. So that's what I was thinking here. However, Durant has, like, a base 100-something attack. Delibird has 55 and has pretty bad typing that doesn't exactly fit into what I'm looking at here. Like, I mean, I have him as a hazard remover or hazard setup Pokemon in addition to the Hustle thing, and, I mean, he's 4 times weak to Stealth Rock, so honestly, I don't know how long I'll keep him, if I'll use it at all. And the other thing too, like, having a Pokemon like this that is, like, pretty bad and depends on Dynamax to, like, largely be any good outside of just hazards, when I already have such great Dynamax Pokemon already, I feel like it's very unlikely that I'll use it for that. I do have a couple points left over, and we are allowed to do trades, so I might look at dropping it for just a Tier 4 Pokemon. I haven't really looked at the list recently, but I've been thinking about dropping it because I just don't see myself bringing Delibird to any future matchups anytime soon. So yeah, kind of a oddball pick, and probably my worst one of the bunch in my opinion. So number 9, this was pretty much right after Delibird because we were at that end of the order, was Golurk. I wanted a ground type, and Golurk is pretty powerful. It's got 124 base attack, It's pretty slow, so it could also fit into the Trick Room thing, which I think I was kind of hoping to capitalize on. And then it's got like some pretty solid abilities too. Klutz is, I mean, like one of the worst abilities ever. Prevents the use of your item, but like Iron Fist, boosting punching moves, and then No Guard prevents you from missing. Like it gets that dynamic punch, that's really good. So I think it's got good potential here, and yeah, I mean, ground is pretty much like you need a ground type. I mean, at least I really wanted a ground type, and so that was one of the better ones that was left at that point, I think. And then that brings me to my last pick. I had enough points left. I actually had more points than you needed for a tier 1 pick, so like I mentioned, I ended up having some points left over, and there were a couple things I was looking at, namely Terrakion and maybe Keldeo, but I really wanted Cinderace because I think it's incredible, and since I didn't have like a ton of totally reliable hazard removal, I can use Court Change for that, which basically switches all like field conditions from your side to your opponent's side and like vice versa. So like it would switch screens, or if my opponent has any up, like it would switch, you know, hazards that they've set up over to them, which is like better than removal. It's just an outstanding move, and plus with it being fire type, that allows me to, you know, bring that to certain matches and use that in cases where I think that I do want to Dynamax or Gigantamax Lapras or Delibird, because, you know, it's filling the void of a fire type on my team that I'd have by not bringing Charizard. And so, you know, it's incredibly powerful to boot, gets great moves, and so yeah, that was kind of my thought process why I wanted to get it last, even though it doubles up. In fact, the fact that it doubled up with Charizard was, you know, one of the main reasons that I did want it. So yeah, that is the whole thought process of my team here. And so now I'll just jump down into some stats, which Draft League NL nicely lays out for you. So yeah, hazard control. Bronzong has Stealth Rock. I don't know why it doesn't have Rapid Spin. You would think that that's the kind of Pokemon that would have that, but that's okay. Charizard with Defog. I don't know how much I'll use that. Delibird here with Defog and Rapid Spin and Spikes. So, you know, has the potential to be really usable there, but, you know, I don't know if it's enough for me to consider keeping it. Golurk with Stealth Rock. Oh yeah, that's another reason I wanted Golurk too, because I wanted something that wasn't Bronzong and Delibird to be able to set Stealth Rock. And then Morotom with Defog and Slurpuff with Sticky Web. So I think I've got a really good assortment here. I don't have Toxic Spikes, but I have every other type of hazard represented. Unless I drop Delibird, then I don't have Spikes, but, you know, it's whatever. Sticky Web and Stealth Rock, in my opinion, are the big two. So, glad to have those. Then Cleric options, I have Heal Bell on Lapras and Slurpuff. And Slurpuff also gets Aromatisse, but they do the same thing. Or, well, I just said Aromatisse. Slurpuff has Aromatherapy. Interesting. Those are the 6th gen like version exclusive counterparts. So that was an interesting slip of the mind there. So yeah, you know, got some good potential here. Lapras, I think, it's kind of has the potential to really fill that cleric role between setting screens and doing that healing status. And Slurpuff, you know, has the potential to do that as well if I don't want it to sweep in a given week and just want it to be a little more defensive, which thankfully it's able to do really well. Wish Passers, I don't know why they give it its own category, since, you know, it's literally just who gets one move. And I think that there are other moves that would be more worth featuring, like, you know, pivot potential, like U-turn and Volt Switch, Parting Shot, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Slurpuff has Wish, so that's something else that it can do. Again, if I decided to go like a more defensive cleric role for it in a given match. Priority moves, I actually did better on priority than I usually do. Charizard, Quick Attack. Cinderace has Feint, Quick Attack, Sucker Punch. Delibird, Fake Out, Ice Shard, Quick Attack. Dragapult has Quick Attack and Sucker Punch. Lapras has Ice Shard, and Morotom has Sucker Punch. A lot of good priority moves here that I'll probably lean on from time to time because speed isn't everything. And yeah, it's kind of a situational match-to-match thing. Again, looking at speed tiers is very important. So yeah, that's like pretty much the breakdown here. Looking at my season schedule, went 5-0, spoilers, sorry, against the Akron Agrons. And I barely lost 0-1 against the Cleveland Castforms. So through the first 2 weeks, I have a differential of 4 plus 4, and I have a record of 1-1. So that's a really good differential for having lost a game already. Season transactions, I haven't done any yet, but you might see Delibird there. Spoiler alert to maybe my opponents. Got some good opponents coming up. Blessed Walreins is an interesting matchup. He had the first overall pick with Dracovish. And then towards the end of the season, I mean, these are all going to be really good players and good opponents. But the Buffalo Bouffalant in particular, Illogic, he is actually the only other one in the league with some degree of draft league experience, and so that'll be interesting playing against him. He's got a really solid team, and I'm looking forward to going against it. Yeah. And then, just a little more all-time stuff here, but, we've only had one season, be the draft league. And so, that's that. So, that's a breakdown of my team. Thanks for watching, everyone. And, I hope you all get to see this team in action again soon, with hopefully some more wins next week in the Wooper Club League. And I hope that you'll stick around for that. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you liked the content. And I'll be bringing more your way shortly. So thanks, everyone. Take care.